Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva, Tvameva Vedyad Ravindam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunatu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we are in our second chapter still in the Sthita Prajna Purusha section. Signs of the person of steady wisdom. Sthita Prajna. And what verse are we on, Mark?
We're on starting on verse 61 tonight.
Verse 61. Would you help us out, please, Vinay? Chapter 2, verse 61.
Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasya nidriyani tasya prajna pratisthita. Having restrained them all, he should sit steadfast, intent on me. His wisdom is steady, whose senses are under control.
So we've been talking about this idea of uparati, sense withdrawal, or the Raja Yogis call it pratyahara. When we're sitting in meditation, we have to be able to withdraw our attention from the phenomenal world, gross and subtle, meaning mental distractions. And the key to effective uparati is focused attention. And I always like to use the example when I was a young boy, I was an avid reader. And I'd be on the couch in the living room and engrossed in a book. And my mother would call us for dinner and I wouldn't even hear her, because I was so engrossed in the book. So it's a skill we all have, but we need to practice it. Having in our meditation in the beginning a point of attention. It can be the breath, or like what you were talking about, a body scan. It can be a mantra. It can be an image of your Ishta Devata. It can be Lord Krishna. Let me give you my understanding of what we do in meditation in this way. The grosser the mind, the more meditative supports we will need. If the mind is very agitated or filled with a lot of desire or filled with a lot of regret or trauma or things like that, we may need lots of meditative supports. What do I mean by meditative supports? You may want to go to a Krishna Das concert, stand in the aisles, sing to your heart's content, dance and clap. That's a meditation. It's a very valid one. But as your mind gets more subtle, you may be sitting at home and you may have your mala, your prayer beads. You may chant your mantra out loud. Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah Shivaya. As your mind gets more subtle, you may drop the mala and just chant the mantra. And as your mind becomes more and more sattvic, even drop the mantra. Now, in addition to sitting in meditation, when we're moving through the world, Shankara says the best uparati is when the sense objects do not create vrittis in the mind. So this is like when we dial down all the stories we have about phenomena, tuning up the mind, keeping it intensely introverted. I can remember when I began to practice this in the beginning, I'd walk through Golden Gate Park, look at a flower, just see the flower, and look at a leaf, and just a leaf, and just a candy wrapper on the back, and just people playing baseball, just mother with a baby stroller. The stories I'm talking about, oh, that's such a beautiful flower. Oh, the fragrance is so good. Oh, it reminds me of the flowers that we used to grow when I was a child. Or, how could someone throw a candy wrapper on the ground here at Golden Gate Park? That's so unconscious. Do you understand what I mean by the additional story we add to the direct perception? Work on letting that go. Takes enormous attention and concentration. Now, the second half of this shloka, with the yogi's mind intent on me. Now remember, we can study Gita at 3 levels. We can study it as a Dharma Shastra. It gives us instructions of what to do. Do good, be good, don't be a jerk. That's about basically all of it. We can study Gita identified as the subtle body, developing qualities of head and heart. Or we can read Gita from the standpoint of Krishna. Listen carefully. When Krishna says, with your mind intent on me, A grosser meditation is to visualize the form of Lord Krishna. No problem. But when Krishna says me, he means yourself. So the deeper meaning of this verse is what I call this radical reversal of the attentive faculty. I love the very simple meditation that Ramana Maharshi gives us. Koham, who am I? To whom did this feeling occur? To me. Who am I? What is my essential nature? I am not anything in the phenomenal world. I am Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness, soaking the mind. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Dhyayato Vishayan Punsaha Sangateshu Pajayate Sangat Samjayate Kamaha Kamat Krodho Vijayate. When a man thinks of objects, attachment for them arises. From attachment, desire is born. From desire arises anger.
So here Krishna is describing the fall of the person. How is it that I get caught up into suffering, regret, the pain of craving? So this is the process. We need to see the process. First idea. What's the first idea?
When a man thinks of objects, attachment for them arises.
So I was sharing with never mind, we'll talk about that later. First thing that happens is the object comes to mind. Comes to mind in two ways. First, the senses perceive it. Ben and Jerry's ice cream, there it is in the market. Or I can be sitting home alone and all of a sudden, wouldn't pizza be good tonight? And the idea arises. Now, why does the idea of the desirable object arise in the first place? Here, it's a value to review the understanding of vasana. Anna, is this a word you're familiar with?
I've heard it, but no.
Let's redefine it, make it clear. Vasana is a subset of sanskara. Sanskara is simply an impression. Can you see that that's a table? You know that that's a table because you've been taught that that's a table. If you were an Australian Aborigine, you could not see a table. What you'd see is firewood. If it grows in the ground, it's a tree. If it's dead and not growing in the ground, it's firewood. You don't see table. Eskimos have something like 34 different words for snow. We hardly even have an experience of it in the Bay Area. So we get words, we get ideas to describe phenomena. Those are sanskaras. Listen carefully. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. We couldn't function in the world without it. I like to use the example of an infant, a newborn. They're in the crib, and parents will frequently over the crib put a mobile up above. What's the purpose of the mobile? Who knows this?
It's like it because it's moving.
The purpose is it helps to teach the child to focus on an object. Who says you're supposed to focus your eyes? You have to be taught that. These are all samskaras in the Hindu tradition. The vast majority of the personality, sanskaras, are set in place by the age of 5. After that, it's lather, rinse, repeat. We just keep acting out on those samskaras. Now, a subset of sanskara is a vasana. It comes from the root vas, vasati, which means to linger or to dwell overnight. It's a particular kind of impression. It's an impression that's left in the unconscious as the result of previously performed egoistic actions, meaning they have qualities of I-ness and minus, and have the qualities of joy giving or misery producing about them. It's joy giving. I'll think, oh, that was so wonderful. And the implication is, I'm going to look for that experience again. Or that was terrible. I don't ever want to do that again. How could anybody like doing that? Bungee jumping off a bridge? I thought my heart was going to stop. People are nuts. So we get a deep impression in the unconscious. And that's where we start thinking. It causes us to think about these objects based on the force of the past. Now, a vasana has 2 inherent powers. Does anybody remember what they are?
Wailing power and projecting power.
Yes, in the Sanskrit, that's avarana shakti, veiling power, and vikshepa shakti, projecting power. So, what does a vasana do? The first power of a vasana is that it robs me of self experience. If your mind is tuned up, in that state, you are aware, oh, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahma. Chidananda Rupa, my form is bliss consciousness. At that time, your mind is free from vasana. But when the spiritual veil comes down, it's like falling asleep. Immediately, the Vikshepa Shakti takes over. And it projects essentially 3 ideas. The first, Jiva Bhavana. I think I'm a person. I lose awareness of the fact that I am Brahman, and that I immediately think I'm Jim. That takes the form of I think I'm the body, or the body plus the personality. Then the world of name and form appears concrete to me and permanent and inherently joy-giving and misery-producing. Third element is kartavya, struggle, obligatory action. I'll be happy when it'll be better, more, better, different. You need drugs, sex, and rock and roll. So, in this first idea, how do I know I'm under the influence of vasana? I think I'm a person. So drill this idea into your head. This is jnana abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. I'm under the influence of spiritual ignorance, avidya. And anything my mind posits after that is going to be shaped by that vikshepa shakti. I think I'm a person, I've got a goal, let's fight, struggle, get on the treadmill. So what do? If I think I'm a person, drop it. Drop the struggle. We remind ourselves the phenomenal world is neither good nor bad. It's inherently neutral. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The world of name and form, the Jagat, Mithya, illusion. So what happens if I'm caught up in the delusory trap? I'm under the influence of vasana. First thing, I start thinking about the objects, and if I repeatedly think about them, attachment for them arises. Or repeat the experience. I'm convinced happiness is out there. Next idea.
From attachment, desire is born.
Yes. Kama. And what we need to understand is, what does it feel like to want something you don't have? Yoga says it sucks. Yoga says there's no other suffering. What about if I have a broken leg? Okay, let's put physical pain on the shelf. But most of us are not tortured by that. People don't shoot themselves because they've got a broken leg. It's all in my mind. It's where the suffering happens, the torture happens. And it's some form of kama, desire. Takes three forms. Raga, passion for things. I want. Dvesha, aversion. I want to get rid of. Bhaya, fear. I'm not going to get what I want. I have what I want, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. The fool thinks I'm unhappy because I'm not getting what I want. Buddha, fool. The yogi understands I'm unhappy because I'm wanting. I'm deluded. I think there's inherent goodness, joy, happiness in a world that's apart from me, myself. It's all over there. It's not about be here now, it's I'll be there then. So karma arises. And it takes a long time for us to see that the karma, I want this, I want that, and the dukkha, the suffering, are the same thing. Next idea.
From desire arises anger.
Oh, yes. So, what is the truth about the world? Fundamental impermanence is the place we start. I like to tell people just things humorously. All relationships end in death or divorce. All of them. You can either have a young, hot, sexy lover, or you can have a long-term relationship. You cannot have both. If you're with someone for 40 years, guess what they're going to look like? Every car you drive is going to break down and end. Every job you have is going to end. Every person you know is going to die. Every pet you have is going to die. Everything in this world is impermanent. Your political parties, the candidates, it will pass. So we start with an understanding of the fundamental impermanence of the phenomenal world. Later, we begin to see it's much deeper. It's much deeper. We begin to penetrate into the whole illusory nature of perception itself. So we are antidote for the krodha, the anger, is to see the impermanence, the unreality of the phenomenal world. Perceive. We never say that you're not perceiving it. But our belief in its solidness, substantial nature, its permanence, is an illusion. And also of self. I keep trying to defend, justify, protect self, a self that doesn't exist. This individuality, this person, is an unreal being. It's at best a mental event. So this is why we get angry. I'm not getting what I want. It's not happening according to my plan. That's the fruit of desire. Next idea.
It's the next verse.
All right, next verse.
Krodha bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti brahmaha, smriti bhramshad, buddhi nasho, buddhi nashat, Pranashyati. From anger comes delusion. From delusion, loss of memory. From loss of memory, the destruction of discrimination. From destruction of discrimination, he perishes.
Yes. So once I get angry, what's my response when I'm angry? I want to hurt the people I'm angry at. I want to fight, dominate. Take revenge. So then our lives start to reflect chaos. Karmically, really weird stuff starts to happen. When the desire is not fulfilled, the foolish person responds with anger, Krota. And from Krota, what happens next? Delusion?
From delusion,
Is that the same thing? From anger comes delusion?
correct.
Okay. And what's the primary delusion? They're doing it to me. It's interesting when we do inventories of our kleshas, our defilements, our afflictions, or I am lost. I really gotta deal with my lust. Oh, I've got anger issues. I have control issues. But few of us are willing to admit, I have self-pity. I spend time in the morning being a victim. My life is so bad and they have done it to me. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Oh, we get kind of a delicious pleasure out of wallowing. That's a klesha. That's all rooted in delusion. On the other hand, flipping it around, what does the yogi do? She practices titiksha, usually translated as forbearance, the capacity to endure the vicissitudes, the pinpricks of life without the need for redress or revenge. But deep titiksha comes as a deep insight into karma. So we do not get what we want in life. No. Listen carefully. We do not get what we need either. There are deeply religious people who are starving to death and getting blown up. What we do get is the inevitable result of the force of our past actions, most of which are done in ignorance. And this is not only individually, but with groups. When the Industrial Revolution came about, in the middle of the 19th century, not a soul was aware that 100 years later, 150 years later, we'd be destroying the planet in global warming. We do lots and lots of things in ignorance. But karma doesn't say, well, we're going to let you off the hook because you didn't know about it. So, all sorts of things happen to us. But if we play victim, we have no chance of ever changing things. It becomes a karmic circle. This is what the Hebrew scriptures meant when they said, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons, even to the second and third generation. Let me give you a very clear example. One of the big issues now that's going on in the Western world is the issue of predatory priests who sexually abuse usually young boys. You've all read about this? Yes? Actually, most of those predatory priests are themselves victims of childhood abuse. This has been going on for generations. Get past that. This is not to excuse their behavior. But hurt people. And if we keep hurting people, had a conversation today with someone who said, well, if society is run by oligarchs and the social structures are such that everybody is oppressed and living in poverty, they have a right to react with violence. And I'm like, yogi. I don't know what the answer is, but I know what doesn't work. Fighting for peace is like screwing for chastity. Karmically makes no sense. Temporarily, you may get some results. But violence breeds violence. So not yogis, the bhogis, the enjoyers, the mudhas, the fools, unaware of this, are caught up in delusion. They think they are victims of an unjust world, and then they react with redress, revenge, violence. Delusion. Next idea, what happens when we're deluded?
From delusion, loss of memory means buddhi nasho.
Buddhi nasho it can also mean your just mind gets destroyed.
Yeah.
Your understanding gets destroyed. But the idea here is our whole understanding of what's right and what's wrong, and what's just and what's unjust, what makes for a good society, what's according to the Dharma, both personally and as a society, gets lost. And then we tailspin into deeper and deeper suffering. Here, he says, we're destroyed. So the yogi understands this descent of a person into suffering. And it's not only descended to our own personal suffering, but then we become part of the problem for the society itself. Any thoughts on this? So, Shankara uses the example of children at a South Indian temple, that's got these steps, and they're playing with a rubber ball up on the portico. And the ball gets away from them and it bounces on the step and goes chunk, 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 all the way to the bottom. This is the descent of the human being. But if the child loses the ball and it bounces on the top step and they're able to reach out and grab it, then it doesn't go chunk, 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 all the way to the bottom. So where do we have some ability to obviate, to keep the mind from going down this terrible fall? What was the first thing that Krishna said? What was the first thing? What was the top of the list?
When a man thinks of objects.
Yeah. There's where we have some power. You may not be able to keep it from arising, but you can say, no. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. You can do two things, three things. The first, turn your mind to God. I don't really want that object. What I really want is Krishna. That is problematic. Throw yourself into service. Seva. I don't care what your problem is. Go serve someone. Call up a friend and say, I'm totally in my head. You tell me what's going on with you. And listen, be attentive to the suffering of another. And of course, the subtlest, you see it for what it is. Don't go. Sometimes our memory fails us. We don't remember the teaching and the qualifications of a fit student in Vivekachudamani. Shankara has a term before we actually get into the floor. He says, someone who is medha, who has a keen memory. It doesn't mean you can quote shlokas from memory. That's helpful. The deeper understanding is to be able to apply the teaching at the appropriate experience in life. So you get triggered by an object, or your mind presses out an idea. Oh, I'm not going to go there. Oh, Shivaya, Shivaya. No judgment. This is tapas. This is far more important than staying up all night or going the whole day without eating. This is the tapas that'll change your life. Very, very important verses. Any thoughts on this? All right, next one.
Ragadvesha vimuktastu Vishayanindriya yashcharam Atmavas ye vidyet yatma prasadam dhigachat prasadam adhigachati. But the self-controlled man moving among objects with his senses under restraint and free from both attraction and repulsion attains peace.
So the opposite of the fallen yogi, the fallen person, is the person who has this emptiness. We tune up the mind and practice not letting the mind get caught into reaction because of sense perception. It's like when you're rinsing some vegetables or you're putting your pasta into a colander, the water just falls through. Shankara will use the image of a wicker basket that you pour water into and it just drains out. So whatever comes to us, positive, negative, or neutral, just let it pass through. Nobody there. And if you see a reaction come up, you notice it and let it go. Don't react to your reaction. What are pleasure and suffering? It's so simple. If the situation, the environment is conducive based on the past, the mind says it's happy, raga. If it's non-conducive, don't want that. In the beginning, you'll see those reactions arise. Don't engage them. They're not real. Practice not getting involved. So any of us who've done long meditation retreats, I'm not talking about a day or two, I'm saying like 10 days at least. Who's done that before? So what happens when material starts to unload out of the unconscious? What do? What'd you do, Daniel?
You sit with it and you stick with the meditation technique that you're practicing.
And what happens eventually?
It passes and something else comes up.
Yeah. Because remember, all form is impermanent. Just because you have a feeling doesn't mean you need to take an action. That's revolutionary for most of us. Well, I just had to say that rude thing to the person. Why? Because I was feeling it. You didn't have to say that. Be present to the feeling. It's not real. It's just some piece of energy. And let your energy body just shake, rattle, and roll, and it'll stop. You don't even have to try to get away from it. It will pass. The one thing you can do is remind yourself no thought is fundamentally, I cannot think a real thought. It's just what has arisen, pass, be empty. Everything passed. This is this sama drishta. Sama means saying. Drishta means vision, seeing the world with an equanimity of mind, an equality of vision. For the woman of knowledge, this comes naturally. For you and me, this is abhyasa. This is a practice to take on. Now, many people will be on a retreat, they'll spend some time with a great Mahatma, and they'll have some really deep spiritual experiences. Think, oh, maybe even enlightened. Then they go out in the world, and the world afflicts them. They find themselves acting in a not too spiritual way. Or there's another rationale. Oh, the world, it's all samsara, it's all suffering. I'm going to leave the world because it's so painful. You only done part of the work. Need to be able to see the self in and through all the phenomena. How do we do it? Samadrishta. So if a situation arises that agitates us, that's my guru. So here's an important maxim, another little slogan. It is a spiritual axiom that if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, with the defilement, with the attachment, with the identification, with the aversion. Well, does that mean they're right and I'm wrong? No, I didn't say that. The world and its people are oftentimes quite silly. But if you and I react to it, then we have a problem. Well, don't I have a right to be angry if someone cheats me? You can do whatever you want. But if you want to be free, practice this samadrishta. All of the triggers pass through. If I'm reacting, I'm the one with the klesha. It's never, ever, ever. This is perhaps one of the most difficult spiritual ideas for us all to internalize. I'm upset and they done it to me. That's what delusion does. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirsyopajayate prasanna chetaso yashu buddhihi paryavatishtate. In that peace, all pains are destroyed, for the intellect of the tranquil-minded soon becomes steady.
Yeah. So, as we let go of our obsession with the world, as we let go of this idea that my serenity, my happiness is dependent on externals, my mind becomes more and more quiet. And then my peace is independent of the world. This is what the Master Jesus was talking about. My peace is not of this world. Peace I give you, not as the world knows it. You and I think, oh, peace is when I hit all the green lights of life. I'm getting what I want. No. Sthita prajna, steady wisdom. I'm at peace, no matter what goes on. Oh, Jim, I just can't read the newspapers. It upsets me so much right now. No. Read the newspaper. I wouldn't be necessarily obsessed with scrolling through, various stuff all day long. That's polluting your mind. But as a responsible citizen, you should probably have some idea what's going on. But watch it. It's just the Lord's Leela. And you do not need to lose your peace because of what's going on. Any thoughts on this? It's really, in a way, almost a decision to make my peace of mind my most prized possession. Nothing in the world is important enough for me to lose my serenity. Fortunately, many of us will squander it because of an unkind word or a scowl. Next verse.
Nasi buddhiryuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na chabhavyatah shantir ashantyasya kutah sukham. There is no knowledge of the self to the unsteady, and to the unsteady no meditation, and to the unmeditative no peace. To the peaceless, how can there be happiness?
Yes. So we had our description of the descent of a person into suffering. Now, in the language of negation, he's talking about what is it that we need to have in order to have peace. So the first idea is Atmavidya, knowledge of my own self, not just an intellectual understanding from the books, but the direct experience. The self in me is a changeless reality. I'm not a person. I'm safe. So with knowledge of the self, or without it, what happens if you don't have knowledge of the self?
There is no knowledge of the self to the unsteady,
Yes.
and to the unsteady, no meditation.
So I need to have cultivated this samadrishta, this uparati, this dharana, single pointedness of mind, a steady mind makes knowledge of the self easy. When the mind is not steady, there's, what do you say, no meditation?
Yeah.
What do we mean by meditation? All the things we've talked about. And finally, when we get into the great Vedantic meditation of Atma Vichara, inquiry into the nature of the self. I'm not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I'm not even the nescience of deep sleep. Who am I? The knower of all that, who's untouched, ever the same. Nitya, not Ananda, eternal. And if you don't have meditation, what happens next?
And to the unmeditative, no peace.
So you not only need to have your own swadhyaya with scripture, always that's a good suggestion, your own self-study, but it should inspire you to meditate. Regular meditator. All right, next one.
In Indriyanam hi charatam yan mano nuvidhyate taddasya harati prajnanam vayur navam ivam bhashi. For the mind which follows in the wake of the wandering senses carries away his discrimination as the wind carries away a boat on the waters.
Yeah, so we have this as a direct experience in the San Francisco Bay. When you go sailing here, if, for example, you go through Hurricane Gulch, where the wind comes blustering through the Golden Gate, and you lose control of your boat, say your rudder breaks, the wind takes it, you have no idea where you're going to go. So also, to the unmeditated, the unsteady, the person who has no knowledge of the self, the external situations continue to have the power to upset us, rob us of our serenity, caught up in bhoga. Literally means enjoyment, but it's a way of living where I try to maximize all the good things and get rid of all the bad things. It's was talking with a fellow yesterday. God bless him. Breaking up with his girlfriend. He's having a hard time at work. He already crashed his motorcycle, so he bought a brand new motorcycle. He's got some significant credit card debt. So what did he do? Went out and bought a brand new truck. And there's nothing wrong with buying a truck. But that's not going to solve the problem. Now he's got to pay for it. Over time. That's what most of us do. It's low grade irritation, discontent, agitation. So we do fixing behaviors. Try to make the agitation go away. It's never permanent. It never works. Usually just digs the groove of the vasana deeper. What does the yogi do? Tapas. When those desires and aversions arise, lean into them a little bit. Notice them. Oh, look, there I am wanting. Don't feed it. Some tapas. All right, this is a good place to stop. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.